Attention, please. All right, thank you. The person standing in front of you at this moment is Sister Mimi Geya. I am the manager for primary health care under Campus Health Clinic at the University of Johannesburg. My task for this afternoon, evening, so to speak, is to welcome you all. And before I go on, I'd like to recognize the following. The Director for the Library and Information Center, Dr. Bauer. I'd also like to welcome Sister Raini Magai, who is the head for the Institutional Office for HIV and AIDS. Mr. Andrew Munyai, who is the head in the SJES, currently representing Student Affairs. Also to recognize Sue Hickey and Ntate Nape Wamotana, who are going to be telling us more about the books that they have penned down. Also to welcome our facilitator, Ms. Buhle Hlachwayo. Also to recognize contribution that the UJFM has contributed to this function. Buhle, you will recognize her from the radio station. In welcoming you, I thought of discussing a few issues from a poem which I could not get the author of. It is titled Dare to Dream. It says, some people only look at life through the eyes that seldom gleam, while others look beyond today as they are guided dream. And the dreamers that cannot be sidetracked by dissenters who may laugh, for only they know alone, only they alone know how special their path is. But dreams aren't captured easily. There's much work that is done, but in time, the efforts are all worthwhile. When the impossible dream comes true, there's also strength in numbers that makes the dream come true. And when a common goal is shared, the once impossible dream becomes true for all those who dared. And once it's seen as reality, a dream that has just begun, for magically from dreams come dreamers. And a walk therefore becomes a run. And with growth comes more obstacles. And with obstacles comes fear. But the dream that is worth dreaming finds its way to the deer. And the dream continues to grow, reaching the heights before unseen. And it's all because of the courage of dreamers and the courage they got from the dream. All of this is concluded by saying, if you want to dream and you want to achieve your dream, take up one idea. Make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, and live for that idea. Let the brain, let the muscles, the nerves, every part of your body be full of that idea. And just live every day for that idea. That is the way to success. Looking at the areas of discussions for today, we're talking about love, affairs, and the issue of blessers. I want to go to a statement that the university believes in and has issued, and I think we are all aware of. Just two issues from that. The University of Johannesburg recognizes the efforts done by various support services, which amongst others include the psych ed, campus health, protection services, including the library and information sessions of this kind, where we share ideas and debate issues that are pertinent to all of us. The university therefore recognizes and support the idea that students and young people have the right to make their own choices in life with regards to relationships, but they also have the freedom to exercise their decisions with caution. While the advances of an older man or an older woman may come with money and gifts, it may appear appealing, but we encourage students to make those decisions around those ideas with caution. In essence, the relationships that come under the concept of blessers are relationships that are not equal, that are in essence predatory, and are dangerous and also degrading. Blessers and sugar mummies a sugar coating of making the term fancy, and is also a name that has recently come up. And the university actually condemns the current trend of blessers. We therefore encourage all students, both male and female, to shun the concept and relationships that are named blesser, blessee phenomenon. With those few words, I'd like to hand over to Buhle to continue with the activities of the day.
All right, very special thank you to Sister Mimi Geya, who's the manager of primary healthcare for UJ, with the welcoming of all you guys, as well as words of wisdom through a poem which talks about reaching your dreams and through that, making a success of yourself. So a huge thank you for that. Without any further ado, I would love to welcome all of you guys to the book discussion titled Love, Affairs and Discussions, taking place right here at the Chinua Achebe Auditorium on the 6th floor of APK, a library based at the University of Johannesburg. My name is Buhle Hlachwayo, and I will be your facilitator for this session. All right, so to get things on... You know, I can actually get used to this kind of audience. So thank you so much for the cheerfulness. Let's keep it going. All right. So before we get the show on the road, first of all, I just want to thank all of you guys for coming through and making yourself available to join us on this amazing day, just to be together and share some insights as well, especially if it's got to do with eradicating gender-based violence. It just shows that we're really serious about this campaign, and with the seriousness, we can, as a society, achieve the eradication of gender-based violence. So for that, thank you to all of you. All right, so without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you the author of Hamba Kahle, Sugar Daddy, who goes by the name of Ntate Nape Omutana, who will be coming here with a presentation. But before we get into that, I just want to give you guys a brief background on Ntate Nape Omutana. Nape Omutana is a Pretoria-based author who has worked as a social worker, journalist, and copywriter. In the 1980s, he's been a playwright, a poet activist, and a short story writer. His well-known books include Fana for Rees Lobola, Son-in-Law of the Buddha, and the stage play, The Honeymoon is Over. Hamba Kahle, Sugar Daddy is a book which explores the blesser/blessee phenomenon through the eyes of an 18-year-old female high school student. But without any further ado, I would love to introduce to you Ntate Nape Omutana.
Good evening, students of the University of Johannesburg, staff members, and the organizers of this book fair or launch of the book. My name is Napi Mutan, as they've rightly introduced me, the author of Hamba Sugar Daddy. Just a minor correction, not Hamba Kahle, but Hamba Sugar Daddy. Maybe that will be the sequel. That could be the sequel to this one. It's okay. Yes, the idea to write this book was inspired by an article which I read in Drum magazine around 2012. It was entitled A Bitter Taste of a Sweet Life. I can tell you that after reading that article, I just felt I was going to churn out something. I didn't know what, whether it would be a short story, a novella, a novelette, whatever. I just felt something will or should come out one day. So it took quite some time before I wrote it. All I can say, I'm going to be very brief because we writers are typically people of very few words. We express ourselves primarily through such books. And I must say, I appreciate to be taken out of the comfort zone, because as writers, you just sit there and write and write and write. So it's also a wonderful opportunity for me to be invited to the book launch. It's not every writer who's invited for the book launches. I wasn't even sure. In fact, the publishers of this book had said there was no guarantee that there would be a book fair. So I'm very, very grateful that the University of Johannesburg came out to help in launching the book. As I said, I'm going to be brief. As the writer, I played God and created characters whom I believe is an interesting mix. The main character, Rolibu Ramabulana, and the sugar daddy, Big Vi Masemola. Otherwise, I had many, many interesting characters. The most important, of course, being the girl's mother. I tried as much as I can to create conflict, because conflict for us fiction writers is the lifeblood. It's the adrenaline of what we write. So I tried as much as I can to create a lot of conflict. So I expect you to ask a lot of questions. I don't want to tell a lot about the book because I want you to be curious and be able to flock to the bookshops or to go to the library. It was a very fascinating journey. There were many challenges on the way, but my research didn't involve going to the townships. And although, well, I did talk to a lot of teachers and a lot of young people. And I got a lot of good input, and I put everything into this book in a way that I felt would be entertaining, would not bore the reader, would sustain conflict until the last page. I thought, as I read the article, one thing that I discovered, the article in Drum magazine, one thing that I discovered was that the stories were not like fairy tale-ish, where a sugar girl met a sugar daddy and life was exciting. I wouldn't be able to write even more than 10 pages if I wrote that kind of a story. But one story that I picked up was a girl who wanted to opt out, who wanted to get out, to walk out of the relationship. And the sugar, the blazer wouldn't just let her go away. Mahala fela. So I just had to create conflict, and I believe it's an interesting book, it's an interesting read. So let me pause here and wait for you to ask questions. If there's anyone who will have read it, it will be even interesting. But if you haven't read it and you want to know something about how I wrote it, about the story and so on, you are most welcome. My disclaimer is that you may ask a very brilliant, interesting question which may not receive an interesting or intelligent answer sometimes, because we writers are writers, as I said. And another thing, there's no commercial break here. You know what I like with the radio is that they ask you a question and they take a commercial break whilst you think about yourself. But it's fine. You are welcome to ask any question. And I appreciate that you happen to be the right target market in addition to parents. So you are welcome. Let me receive your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mic check, there we go. Thank you very much, Ntate Nape, for giving us a brief presentation on the book. Let me correct myself by saying Hamba Sugar Daddy, not Hamba Gahle. Apologies for that. All right, so next up we have our next co-author who goes by the name of Sue Hickey. Sue Hickey is a well-known Johannesburg-based author and therapist who has been in practice for almost 30 years. She has worked with and achieved impressive results in people's lives, including co-author and domestic abuse survivor and affair survivor, Philippus Klaw, who unfortunately is not in the venue with us at this point in time. The book, The Affair, explores the views of victims and perpetrators when it comes to sex, lies, regrets, and justifications around their affairs. Now, without making you guys wait any further, I do introduce to you Sue Hickey.
Hello. Okay. Welcome to all of you students. I think that there's some people who were with, because I was here last year for my last book on When Loving Him Hurts. I have to say that I found this audience probably the toughest on the rodeo, on mine at any rate. So hopefully I'm a bit better prepared for you guys tonight. And I hope I can do justice to some of the questions. The book is called The Affair, and I wrote it with the same person I wrote When Loving Him Hurts with. And really, we wrote this book because people asked for it. When we were writing the last book, a couple of people said, I think you guys are writing the wrong book. And when we asked them, they said that they thought the book that needed to be written was The Affair. So when we went back to them, we kind of said, well, given that you think this is the book that needs to be written, you need to tell your stories. So The Affair is the stories of men and women, people who've had affairs, people who have had affairs done to them, if I can put it that way, the children of parents who have affairs. And they really are, every single story in this book is a true life confession. Not one of these stories have I made up. Every single one of them has been given to us. So I'd just like to give you a brief outline of the book. You all, of course, know that when we talk about affairs, we're not talking about the same thing every time. There are what we call the fling, which is the 1 or 2 nights of really unplanned, often with quite a lot of alcohol or drugs involved, and with no intention to continue it. That, of course, is not the same beast as a 15, 20-year love affair, obviously. And then we have another affair, which we call the virtual affair, which is the relationship in which 2 people are claiming to be in love with each other. They claim that they want to be together. They often make huge claims of feeling that they were in past lives together, that they had destined to be together, but they don't actually consummate that that relationship. So it is so-called innocent in that it's not consummated, but in our opinion, it's anything but innocent because it's incredibly disloyal. We then tried to profile cheaters, and this was one of the most fascinating parts of the book for me, is that we looked at the narcissist, and as I'm sure a lot of you know, narcissism is a personality disorder that affects about 6% of the population, men and women. To have a relationship with a narcissist is incredibly painful because they start off being very charming. You understand, a narcissist has to be charming because what they want is they want people to like them, love them, look up to them. So when you first get involved with a narcissist, they tell you that you're fabulous and everybody else isn't. And they compliment you constantly, which is fantastic. What most of us miss with a narcissist is that they are not complimenting you. They are giving you a clue as to what you're supposed to be doing, which is complimenting them. So every compliment that a narcissist gives you is a clue. And ultimately, the narcissist will become bored and tired. And then where you could do nothing wrong, you can now do nothing right. The narcissist, however, is unlikely to seek out another partner. For them, chasing someone is frankly beneath them. They expect their partners to come crawling, groveling, applauding to them. We then looked at the sexual predator, and I had a wonderful opportunity to interview a man who is a sexual predator. He told me after he'd done the interview, he came back to see me I interviewed him with his wife, came back afterwards to say that he was quite offended that I had labeled him a sexual predator. He had thought himself to be a player, and he thought he was grand and he loved his life, and I had somehow made him feel like a pervert. So we spent quite a lot of time looking at what it is to be a sexual predator. He ultimately gave me a checklist for every young woman, how to spot a sexual predator and why to stay away from them. And we then looked at the romance addict, which is the person who they need to be in agony in order to be in love. So they're only ever in love with someone who's actually ultimately unavailable to them. So they yearn and they crave and they want and they plot and plan. In event of them getting this relationship, the chances are they can't sustain it. Because the day-to-day business of having a relationship with money, transport, health, it's too tedious for them. They need to be yearning and dreaming. So we looked at the profile of cheaters, and then what I call the opportunistic cheater, which is actually most cheaters. Most cheaters, but I say that in the kindest sense of the word. Most cheaters are not personality disorders, they're not sexual predators, they're not romance addicts. They're just people who made bad decisions, quite frankly. Affairs are linked to opportunity. So most of the time, people, they were miserable, they were unhappy, they were tired, they wanted to feel special, and they made bad decisions. It really is that simple. And when I say bad decisions, I'm going to stand by that and say, my position in this book is that having an affair, if you're in a sexually committed relationship or in a sexually exclusive relationship, is a bad decision. I think it's disloyal. I think it makes a mess. I think it potentially hurts too many people. And if the relationship is that lousy, you need to leave, not cheat. So I've unapologetically taken that position in this book. The other position I've taken is that someone had an affair does not signal the end of your relationship. People feel like if they want to reconcile or they want to go back, they're made to feel weak and embarrassed. So other people will say, I would never put up with this. If this happened to me, not a chance. I would tell him to do da-da-da-da-da. It's not true. Most people grasp and they plead and they beg and they cry and they phone in the middle of the night. Own up, that's what we do. Okay, we're not big, we're not brave, we don't swear. We do swear, but after we swear, we beg. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is people do not have to be embarrassed about wanting back. You also don't have to be embarrassed by refusing to go back. You do not have to be embarrassed by saying no to having someone cheat on you. You can do either of them. But the book says if you want to go back, there are certain people you should trust and there are others that you shouldn't. If you want to go back, there are ways that you rebuild trust. And there is behavior that doesn't rebuild trust. So I have stories of people who have burnt the linen, scoffed in the car door, shot up the place. These things are not helpful. They're understandable, but they're not helpful. So we look at what is helpful and what is not helpful in this book. I believe that there are lots of important conversations that have to happen in that marriage, whether you go back or you don't go back. And when I say marriage, I mean any committed relationship, quite honestly. It didn't have to be a marriage. If your understanding is that this relationship is sexually exclusive, if someone cheats there, you need to have important conversations. The person who's cheating needs to have important conversations with themselves too. You know, there are people in the book who talk about, they told themselves stories about why they were cheating. The story men tell themselves they don't have enough sex, they don't like how much or what kind of sex they're getting. That's their story. So they have an affair because they get more and better sex. Women tell themselves a different story. They say, I don't feel beautiful, I don't feel special, I don't feel appreciated. That's the story they tell themselves. What they do with that story is that they say, because I feel these uncomfortable things, I'm allowed to have an affair. My cheating is understandable and justifiable. Well, I don't think it is. And I also think that and funnily enough, there's also a different response to that. When men are given that story about how you don't make me feel special, lovable, important, and gorgeous, you know what they say? Ho, ho, go away. Men do not buy it because it is BS. You know what women do? They go, oh, really? Maybe I'm too fat, maybe I'm too thin, maybe I'm too stupid, maybe. Come on, ladies. Man up, grow a pair. We are not responsible if he cheats. We're not. Don't buy it. It's BS. Men don't buy it. I applaud them for that. They go, you're a hoe, go away. That's what they do. Go away. Go away far and fast. So what I'm saying is, come on, ladies, the story doesn't work. And if you buy it, you know what you're saying? Every time sweetness and light, you don't feel happy, I have to worry if you're cheating. It doesn't work. Okay, so the book goes into what works, what doesn't work. What are the to-dos, what are the to-don'ts? Children get involved in affairs all the time. People are always saying, you know what your father did with so-and-so with the rubber tits? Do you know what she's done? They don't want to know about rubber tits. They don't want to know. They don't understand sex. They don't understand what dad did. They actually really don't understand. And when they do understand, they want to know even less. They really and truly don't want to know. So we don't need to involve our children in what has gone on. It's enough that they've heard, they understand. Don't alienate them. So those are the things that we talk about in this book. My hope is that it is a helpful self-help book. So that's my story.
Thank you very much. Mic check once again, and we're back on. Thank you very much, Suheki, it was highly insightful. I think one thing I've noticed is that you touched on most of the points which are seen as important in the book, such as the different tenets of cheaters as well, the different kinds of affairs which exist, which we don't always think about as well. There are other aspects which we also overlook as to whether you're in a relationship or in a marriage with somebody who might embody a narcissist or any other cheater mentioned in the book as well. And with that being said, let's get into our panel discussion. All right, I'm going to start with you, Sue. One thing I want to know from you, what made you want to tell the story from both sides, being the victim and the perpetrator, in most cases being the husband and wife?
Well, I think that, I have to say that it's quite a difficult place for me to write from because I'm about 300 years older than the rest of you. So when I was your age, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have email. We certainly didn't have that you can swipe for some guy who's within 10 Ks who you're going to do God knows what with. So this is all news to me. When I was young, if he didn't phone you the next day, well, you were taking the long walk of shame. It was a shocker. You were almost meant to marry someone that you'd had sex with. Now people have it, it's very different. And so it's a very different world. What, however, I hear from my client is what isn't different is that when our expectation is that this person is our person and they aren't, the laughter stops dead. It is not funny. It is very, very painful. It's painful for men and women. Believe it or not, it is painful for the person who's cheating. And I don't say this as any attempt to excuse it. They are also hurting. They are also in a mess. Everybody is in a mess. So I'm not saying, here my position is that I think cheating is a bad decision. Not that cheaters are bad. I think that every one of us have taken bad decisions in our lives. Certainly I've taken millions of them. I'm just saying, I hope somebody doesn't do it that way as a result of this book.
In your response, Sue, I heard the word expectations, and I want to put great emphasis on that. Is it right or is it wrong for anybody to have expectations when it comes to committed relationships and marriages?
Oh, absolutely it is. If I can't reliably expect X from you, I can see no reason at all for me to be in a relationship with you. If I can't reliably expect your loyalty, your support, your honesty, your trust, I have no reason to not have you as a perfect stranger. However, I believe that where our expectations go wrong is that when we became committed to another person, I think we forgot how much time we will spend not being deliriously happy. When we make a commitment, we go, I'm going to be there for you when I want to be, when I don't want to be, and all the time. And what happens, I believe, that when we become unhappy in our relationships, we become vulnerable to other things. And we're vulnerable because we expect to be made happy. We believe that our loved one needs to make us happy. Well, the bad news is it is not going to happen. We are happy sometimes, bored sometimes, unhappy sometimes, angry sometimes, and all of that time, we need to understand that they have expectations of us that are reasonable. We signed up for that. In relationships, we have conversations about, are we exclusive? Can I expect from you that it's me and no other? Most marriage vows in most religions talk about forsaking all others. We signed up for this. We agreed in conversations to this. There are open marriages. We say in this book, we don't deal with open marriages. We're talking about somebody who hurt somebody because of cheating. We don't talk about porn. We don't talk about internet sex. We're talking about this person actually hurt that person by sleeping with that person. That's what it's about.
All right. And can a victim also be the perpetrator and vice versa? And why is that?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so just to elaborate, in certain instances, you'll find that the victim, he or she will start off as the victim, but whilst they're being in the relationship, they end up being the perpetrator. Or in certain instances, you'll find that from perpetrator, one becomes a victim in that relationship. How often does that happen, and why is it?
Well, I think that, again, Philippa's, and I'm sorry she's not here to speak for herself, she talks about how she cheated in her first marriage. She had a narrative around, I am a young mother, nobody's paying attention to me, I don't feel sufficiently, I don't know what she's supposed to feel, but anyway, she actually cheated in her first marriage. Then she got married a second time, and she married a chronic serial womanizer. And she talks about meeting yourself on the path. So she spent weeks, that's when I met her. She came weeping and wailing like a stuffed pig. My life is falling apart. And then she started to say, except that I did this. He's saying exactly to me what I used to say to my first wife. My first husband. And what she talks about, when you meet yourself on the path, it's not pretty. So she started off as a perpetrator and then became a victim. And she said she spent hours downloading his cell phone, adding up how many minutes he spoke to so-and-so. 37 minutes. You haven't called me for 37 minutes in a month. You called her babe. Who calls someone babe? That's so disgusting. How much money? What? Getting hotel bills. You did this. You were the cheater. Don't act like you don't know what this picture looks like. You did this. We are often both the victim and the perpetrator.
You mentioned something very important with regards to Philippa's story, whereas in the first marriage and second marriage as well, she basically attracted the same type of man. Do you think that that's something that happens on a subconscious level all the time when we don't learn from previous relationships as we should?
Yeah, I think we do. I think that there are patterns around attraction without a doubt.
All right. And as I was going through your book, The Affair, I came across a really interesting part where stating poverty is a passion killer. Please, would you elaborate on that?
Sure. Again, I'm going to go back to a time where all of you were probably at school or at primary school. There used to be a thing in law called alienation of affection. So when I was young, what the kind of thing that would happen is somebody would find out that their husband was having an affair, and they would sue the other woman for a thing called alienation of affection. And it was never going to run, but threaten someone to take R500,000 rand off them. Watch the passion die in a heartbeat. So, let me tell you that very few men are worth 500K. It's suddenly you're just going, whoa, I don't know how fair he really is. So that probably doesn't run anymore, and that law has probably been turfed ages ago. But when you start to do the rands and cents, the bottom line is it's hard enough to keep a family together. It's hard enough to feed children without having to run 2 households. It's easy to have an affair and to go, oh, Nunu, you are so beautiful, I love you. Now Nunu needs rent. And Nunu's children actually need to be fed. And Nunu needs a car. And guess what? Nunu starts becoming nana. I'm saying to women, get off your high horse, play the money card. See how much he's worth. My guess is not that much. So nobody likes to say, oh, he stayed with me for the money. You get to a point where you think, you know what, you'll get over it. So if needs be, don't be scared to go to an attorney and go, how much can I get? Because I promise you, his passion is going to go away. Sorry, it's ugly. Just do it anyway.
All right. And another aspect which I want to touch on before we cross over to Ntate Nape, how often is forgiveness mistaken for reconciliation?
Forgiveness is required for there to be a substantial reconciliation. And we often we often mistake for, there's a forgive and forget saying, and we think I can't forgive because I can't forget. I always say to people, you don't have to forget. Only people with amnesia forget. So you don't have to forget. There's nothing wrong with you. You will remember. But to forgive is to grant a pardon. And we need to do that in our lives. People are allowed to make mistakes. They really and truly are. There's a generosity of spirit that's required in any marriage. It's not too much to ask to forgive. It really isn't. Provided, however, the other person is prepared to really man up for what it means to forgive. Forgive does not mean I'm sorry. It means, do you really understand what you've done? Are you really prepared to wait for my time in which to forgive? We talk a lot in the book about what is it to forgive. And I don't really want to bore you with the details now. You can only reconcile when you've really forgiven. Otherwise, you're patching up as far as I'm concerned.
Right, thank you very much, Sue.
Thank you.
All right, over to Ntate Nape. Okay, based on your book, Hamba Sugar Daddy, what was the journey of writing the book like for you?
Well, the journey started when I was challenged to write something, to write a novella, to be exact, by a publisher in Limpopo. The publisher's son approached me one day and asked if I could send a novel whose theme is for young people, or whose story is for young people. So it took me 3 weeks to have a quick draft, because I wanted to get it out of my system and capture it in black and white. Then from there, I rewrote it several times. But it was a long process before the book was published, because after the Jacana Media accepted the book, I had to wait for 8 months. And a wonderful thing about taking that long was that I came across a lot of new information. For example, when I wrote the book in 2012, I wasn't aware of the term blazer, or the term blazer didn't exist by then. So come 2016, it was easy for me to incorporate the term blazer into the book and to get a lot of information from the media and also TV. So to delay, part of delaying publishing the book was I told the publisher that, can you give me 2 weeks at least so that I should rewrite it. Okay.
All right. And in your response, you mentioned that blesser is a new term, and which leads to my question. Do you think the blesser phenomenon is a newly emerged issue, or has it always been around?
I think it has always been around, but we are during times where new words are created, because as I said, when I wrote, I had focused on the term sugar daddy, but I realized that a new breed, as I made research, a new breed of sugar daddies was older guys, often rich enough to afford to spoil the girl.
All right. So sticking with the word blesser, what I've noticed in your book, the word bless and other biblical sayings, such as God doesn't directly give with his hand, he uses people. Such phrases and word bless itself. So such phrases, such as these, and the word bless as well, are motifs rather in the books, which are not only used in a biblical context, but also in a newly cultural context as well. So my question is, was the juxtaposition of those connotations intentional?
Yes, it was intentional.
All right. Short and sweet. I like that. I like that a lot. Question to you. After going through the process of putting this book together and lots of extensive research as well. What did you discover from that experience as well? And just after writing the book as well? This includes responses from everyone else.
What? Just repeat.
Okay, so to simplify it for you, so after going through the journey of writing this book, what have you discovered from that experience looking back?
Well, what I discovered is that, you know, really a work of art is never complete, but abandoned. There comes a time where you should abandon it. Well, I've learned a lot on the side of editors who challenge me as the writer, somewhere to think out of the box, somewhere not to take the reader for granted, to fill in the gaps, and so on.
One thing I want to mention about both Hamba Sugar Daddy and The Affair is that as much as they discuss different aspects of similar topics, one thing I've realized as well that there are consequences with The Affair. There are psychological and emotional consequences. And Hamba Sugar Daddy, you also explored the consequences with regards to health, such as HIV and AIDS, other STIs, unwanted pregnancy, as well as rape. My question to Sister Mimi, looking at that, how often do we discuss ways on how to live with HIV as much as we're discussing the phenomenon itself?
Thanks, Bushle. I noted the similarities between the two books, you know, because as much as we are talking relationships, we've got healthy relationships, we also have unhealthy relationships. And if you look at a phenomenon like sugar daddy, blesser, blessee, levels of blessers, it goes without saying that there's something unhealthy about it. We need to talk about it. And it is in environments like this that you say, hang on, there's no judging here. There is no right, there is no wrong. Hence we say we are free beings. We have a right to make decisions, and some of us have to learn from those decisions, and it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from those mistakes. But provision of discussion points, you know, safe spaces where people, young people, to be very pertinent, to say, let us talk about this. And I do think from this, we will create more spaces of discussion to say, oh, well, here's a phenomenon, here's an issue, and it does not happen in space. It happens in the real world. It happens in the daily lives of people. And we have other issues that we know perpetuate the proliferation of such phenomena. When it comes to the physical health, HIV is a reality, and we've discussed HIV so much. It begins to bore us, but it is there. On a daily basis, there are people who are still being infected, and we can never deny that. How much can we talk about HIV? How much can we talk about STIs, sexually transmitted infections, without feeling judged, without having judging ourselves? Because self-stigmatization is the first point where you feel, if I can sort it out myself, then I will not see it being reflected back on me. So discussion, yes, not as much. I do think we need to talk about it more and to do action, you know, to say these are the activities that you can do to prevent them from happening. And if they have happened, this is how we remedy the situation, and how do we make sure that we curb the miss or the unfortunate situation that has occurred. But they are a reality, and we need to talk about them and then make sure that it does not happen to more people.
And just an interlude to the question I just asked right now, another question I would like to pose to you is that with all the campaigns and the programs we have out there, majority of the time they are aimed at females, young or old. Are there anything out there which are catered towards males as well, young and old as well, in such a way that they can use that opportunity to rectify their mistakes and what they've learned. Are there such programs for males at this point in time?
You know, you are bringing a situation that happens a lot. When we talk about pregnancy, for example, who is the first person to prevent the pregnancy? It's the lady. But can she fall pregnant by herself? Definitely not, unless we must go to Life Sciences 101, you know? So we live in a society where, I'll make an example of a family situation, mother will get the girl child first and tell her how to prevent the pregnancy before focusing on the boy child to say, this is how you, my boy, can ensure that your sister and her likes do not fall into that teenage pregnancy situation. It is something that we need to change. When we talk about contraceptives, I can count 4 or 5 methods that you can find at the clinic to prevent pregnancy. But who is preventing it? That's the female. But what are we saying about the male? What are we saying about our boy children? I'm talking children as they are as young as possible before they get to university levels. We do also acknowledge that healthcare tends to be skewed in the female because of issues like menstruation. You menstruate as early as 9, and that is where your first contact with healthcare comes in. Well, I'm leaving out the early childhood part. Now, when it comes to males, the challenge is upon us. I can say at the campus health clinic, we have a male nurse. And since he has come in, I'd have to tell you, we have more participation from male students saying, sister, can I see Mr. Tidiso? That is a plus on our part because we tend to be mothers, and that is a concept that needs to change. But also the challenge is upon us when we talk about gender-based violence. The first thing we talk about is the male is the perpetrator. The male, the man, the boy, you know, we want behavior, and we are forgetting that gender-based violence can be both sides. But I am also looking forward to a time where I will have a campaign or an activation by males to say, if we can do something about it, it's never going to happen. If I, as a male, ensure that I don't engage in risky sexual behavior, I know that I am not passing on an STI, I'm not passing on HIV. So I don't think we are doing enough. There are quite a few programs. We recently introduced wellness program at the gym because we realized that males and muscles go together, you know? And those are some of the programs, but the challenge is upon the males to say, how do we bring them on? I'm going to make an example of our HIV testing statistics. It is skewed around 75, 25, 75% females, 25% males. And the statistics are actually even less when you look at the bigger global population. So as long as we engage in these conversations, I think it's an opportunity for us to change behavior.
Another part in the book, Hamba Sugar Daddy, which I also picked up as well, is besides the juxtaposition of the connotations of the word bless, one thing I appreciated about the book is that you depicted other ways to cope with your HIV status on a more psychological and mental level, and that's by means of spirituality. That in itself are one of the ways of being able to cope for your own benefit. How important is it for you to make sure that you're involved in any sort of healing process for the sake of your mind and your emotions while dealing with a lifestyle condition?
Being honest with yourself is the first step to say, how do I deal with the news that I just heard? We get to situations where someone will go test anywhere. I saw at Maponya Mall the other day that there was a testing center, there was a testing site. So opportunities to test your HIV status are everywhere. I'm talking about on campus, mainly the campus clinics. We are currently having a drive at the APK campus and at the Banting Road campus. But now from there, we provide a continuation of care, linkages to healthcare services. But remember that the individual is the one that has to deal with the news of being HIV positive at that time. From there, psychological help is important because you can never do it alone. Drug addiction, HIV, any kind of illness, it's hard to deal with it on your own. So make sure that you access the available services. On campus, I'm going to talk about PsychEd is there, Campus Health is there, the IOHA office is there. Also making use of peer buddies. Most departments will have peer buddies. The linkies, we have them in abundance here. Can we see the linkies? Other peer educators. So the reason I'm mentioning that is you make use of your peer for support. And if you start engaging with someone that you trust, in a family situation, you can make use of your parents, your sister, your brother, your friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. And I'm talking in a love relationship or not. That has to be acknowledged because once you keep it to yourself, you will become sadder and sadder, and you'll fall deeper and deeper into depression. And once you are in a depressed state, it affects how you think. And once you are depressed, we tend to see self-harm, harm to others, and your life in general. You are here to study, you are here to achieve a goal, and that tends to be affected. So making use of resources around you. Also, the support groups all over Facebook, you'll find them if you don't want to talk to someone that you can see until you are ready to do that. We talk about support groups. Support groups is a term that we realize that students don't like. Because if you say, I must join a support group, it feels like I'm disabled somehow. There's something that I can't do. And sometimes you're also not ready to disclose to others. So that the first step is access the next person that is next to you, available to you, but also healthcare facilities that are available. But it is also important to know that HIV is not only about the emotional, there is also care that needs to follow. The Minister of Health has announced that in the month of September, they are starting a test and treat campaign. Test and treat means you test your HIV status. If you test positive, immediately we refer you for antiretrovirals. We believe if everyone who is HIV positive is put on antiretrovirals, their viral loads will be suppressed and hence minimize opportunities of transmitting the virus. So I think that is very important to know that being on antiretrovirals is the best that you can do when you are diagnosed with HIV.
Right, thank you so much, Sister Mimi, and thank you to Ntatena Bea Mutana as well as Sir Hickey. All right, so now the floor is open to asking any questions. Are there any takers for a question for any of our authors? All right, okay, the guy with the cap. Yes, afterwards. All right. You can stand, you can sit.
Stand
As
up,
long as you've
go
got the